Speaking of defamation lawsuits, so Coomer suing everybody. Coomer is he was the director of strategy and security at Dominion. He is suing. He filed suit, defamation, and among other other type claim against OANN, Newsmax, Giuliani. Who else? Rion Chanel. I forget her. I think that's her name. Rion Chanel.
Yep. The Gateway Pundit.
Gateway Pundit.
Obviously, Sidney Powell. And I think, did they also name Lynn Wood or not?
Yep. I'm 99% certain they named Lynn Wood. So going after everybody for defamation. If you read the lawsuit, I think a lot of people are going to be too emotionally invested to pull back a little bit and see what happened. Whether or not you think, whatever you think of Dominion, you pull back and you look at this individual who's just, a principal of a company who, if the allegations are true, suffered quite a bit. Whether or not you think he deserved it, he suffered quite a bit. And at the Ottman is the other guy, the podcaster who started the snowball rolling,
and so Malkin and
yeah. So the story, the allegation of the lawsuit basically is that there was an unsubstantiated, unverified allegation made on a number of podcasts by an individual named Ottman. I don't know who he is, and I didn't look further into it, but I know he has a podcast and there's a reporter. He has another channel that he talks on, who basically said, I infiltrated a conversation held by individuals and heard someone by the name of Eric say something, never Trump. We're going to make sure Biden wins. I'm cutting out names and cutting out words to keep it clean. The guy says, I don't know who this Eric was, but I think it's this individual, Eric Coomer. Yeah, Coomer. And that's how the ball gets rolling. OANN reports on it. Newsmax reports on it. The individual Coomer starts, getting doxxed, threatened. The worst thing you can imagine, if what he says is true, and no reason really to doubt it. It's the world. Internet is what it is. He's suing for defamation now. And this is part of the strategy of Dominion saying they're going after people. Smartmatic saying they're going after people, issuing letters for retraction. So that's the nature of the lawsuit. It reads relatively. I mean, it reads well. I had some issues with the drafting, but we'll get to that in a later vlog. Two things people are saying: why is Dominion not suing, and why is the principal Coomer, or not a principal? I don't know if he's a principal, but why is the individual employee Coomer suing?
So, I mean, I think he's just starting out of the gate. I'm sure Dominion is going to be suing. I'm sure Smartmatic is going to be suing. So they are escalating they're sending litigation hold letters out and all of that. And they're getting some retractions. Every Fox connected network issued retractions all over the place. And then Newsmax did the same. They did it all over the place. I don't think One America News Network has, and I don't think Gateway Pundit has. And obviously Powell and Wood are not. So from those who are on the Powell Wood perspective, they think it's great because all kinds of discovery will be found. Wood is out tweeting this today, I believe. And so that's their perspective, is that they'll have an opportunity to prove their case because truth is a defense in a libel case. And now they'll get access to a lot of information and whatnot. And we'll see. My own view is that I suspect that a lot of their theories and a lot of their allegations are not true. And so as to Coomer, they clearly didn't. One, he may have a pure negligence standard because he's probably a private figure. And so him individual. So I think the reason why I think they set this up to be lawfare is what I think, because here's what I find peculiar. You're in Dominion's position and in Coomer's position, and you're almost silent for a month, effectively. In other words, you put out statements on your own web pages, but you don't threaten litigation right away. You don't make a big stink out of things. You dodge one hearing at a state legislature. So you even act suspiciously to some people who are looking at things. And what you do is put it this way, here's what it allows to have happen. It allows what I believe to be a disinformation campaign, a distraction campaign, a self-discrediting campaign to really fully develop and full flourish, and allow a lot of the cases and arguments to get derailed in the court of public opinion, allows people to make statements that become incriminatory from a defamation claim perspective by waiting in the way they did. So if I was right that it was a disinformation campaign and that Dominion at some level was a willing participant to allow that disinformation to develop, they behaved like someone who would in the sense of the timing of their objections. But however that may be, the reality is that how are they going to prove? How are Powell and Wood and the other defendants going to prove that that statement they attributed to him is true? In other words, it had all the hallmarks of being false. I never repeated it. But I start off with a simple thing. Look at Dominion and look at whether the evidence shows that Dominion machines influenced the election. So you compare counties in a bunch of states. Dominion is only in some states, not all of them. So, and then there are in only some states, not all states. So compare them all and see if you see a disparate voting pattern show up. In Dominion counties, Trump improved by about 20%. In non-Dominion counties within the same state, he improved by about 20%. Biden improved by about 25% in Dominion counties in terms of vote totals. And in non-Dominion counties, there was practically no difference wherever Dominion was present. So it was clear as like, I can't show a material voting impact by Dominion. So it's a waste of time to pursue it because that clearly isn't where things went AWOL in this election. The second way I knew is as soon as I was down in Georgia, they were eager to do a hand recount. They wanted the blame to go to the machines because they were ready to prove they had nothing to do with it. And people forget the hand recount that was done. If there was any algorithmic manipulation or fractional or any of that, it would have shown up. In Republican counties where Republican observers did get to watch the voting process, there was no evidence of any machine manipulation, period. So once those two things had happened, it was a waste of time to continue to focus on Dominion, and yet they continued to. And to me, that was a sign of a disinformation campaign that whether they were willing participants or just total suckers, they clearly had been taken in by. And then the worst thing is, I always tell everybody, my media clients and other people, be very careful about making specific factual statements about specifically identified people or businesses, unless you're absolutely, you really feel well grounded in the accusation. Now, if you're accusing like Bill Gates, okay, he's not going to run around suing people, but private people, smaller, business enterprises that aren't necessarily really big, they will. And people should have been paying attention to what happened to Alex Jones in the Sandy Hook cases. My view is that was lawfare that was being promoted by the press, hoping people would repeat it in the future. So if you're in the alternative independent media space, particularly be very careful before you're making specific allegations about specific people or businesses that have, and here's the big difference. People are asking me, well, why do you think there could be big damages? Because these are companies that can prove 100 million plus in damages if they don't get certain contracts. That's why one contract in one state gives Dominion 106 million just in Georgia. If they lose that contract, boom, and they can blame this, all of a sudden you have real damages, not just emotional distress.
And it's I'm bringing up this comment because when you say about making specific factual or unfactual allegations about specific individuals, this was specifically one of them that was repeated over and over again in the lawsuit. The guy said, there's a recording. Sidney Powell said, I have a recording. Other people said there's a recording. OANN or Newsmax, one of them reported there's a recording. The plaintiff denies there's a recording, and thus far, nobody's provided a recording. So
there is no recording. I mean, I started looking into this. It turns out almost all these sources are Q-sourced in one way, shape, or form. Almost all this stuff is coming. First of all, think about it for a second. Do you think this really super sophisticated foreign spy company operating with the CIA and China and Venezuela and the ghost of Hugo Chavez and everything else, do you think that their head of security has a Zoom call? First of all, Zoom call conference with Antifa? That isn't how Antifa organizes, folks, on Zoom calls. So, I mean, right away, I was like, what? And then he's going to admit on this Zoom call that could be recorded by people he doesn't know that he personally has made sure Trump can't win? This was incredulous on its face. I mean, people should have recognized there's almost no chance that story's true. So they bought a story that was obvious nonsense, and I think they believe that someone had the proof. Because like the way the whole German server nonsense started, it was a Q source in Germany. I started tracking and tracing these down. This guy that was the colonel that Rudy, for whatever reason, put on panels. That it turns out he was a forklift operator apparently at a brewery in Dallas, and he has never been put up as a cybersecurity expert that I can find until now. Suddenly he's a cybersecurity expert. And he's appearing and testifying before these state legislatures, and he had all the white hats had hacked the black hats, and they could prove all the information traveled to foreign servers. It turns out that apparently his source was another QAnon source. So they're getting all these Q sources that say we have the evidence, and they believed it. which it would goes to further evidence that I think Q is a deliberate psyop increasingly, but the because of its sophistication. But the information they should have known. I mean, just apply your trial lawyer skills to what evidence is likely to be true and provable, and what evidence is what somebody wants to hear. I mean, how many times have we had a client that tells us this evidence exists, or that person will say this, and we listen to it and we're like, probably not. They applied no discipline in their analysis here, and Sidney Powell got taken for a ride, and Lynn, I think, like I said, I think Lynn's been crazy now for at least a year. And now he thinks that car accidents are part of a conspiracy, that the Nashville RV is part of a conspiracy. Maybe it was a missile. I mean, it's all the stuff coming out of this is utter gibberish. That people have been sold, and at some point they got to start to apply some skeptical views as to what they're being told. But I think they're all in trouble. I mean, they set them up well, and now they're going to face a bunch of defamation suits they're going to have trouble with. So the reason why Dominion might be waiting, by the way, is if they plan on suing or believe they will get stuck in Texas, where Powell is a resident. And then the Texas has a lot of rules about 10-day notices for this in order to get this remedy, so on and so forth. So that may be what they're planning on in what they're doing. But I think it looks like they set up a trap to launch lawfare against him. I mean, that Denver case was well thought through. They added a Denver defendant, so they won't be dragged into federal court for diversity jurisdiction.
Yeah, they spent a ton of time on the jurisdiction to justify where they filed suit, which I thought was curious. I'd never seen it. I think it went on for like 3 or 4 pages. Why the court can exercise personal jurisdiction?
Because constitutionally, that's my Covington argument. So now in Covington, I have a harder time because I have a more uphill battle because I have to show personal jurisdiction under the Kentucky statute, which is stricter than the Constitution. But constitutionally, they're probably right because of I think I'm right in Covington. I have more evidence than I think they have in to show Denver, Colorado. But realistically, the reason why they won in Denver is they want a likely liberal Democratic judge, a liberal Democratic jury pool, a more liberal jurisdiction in the state in general. Trending that way. And so they know if they get that kind of jury pool, they'll issue whatever damages they want. And again, for everybody, I kept telling them, just as the big tech censorship campaign, they were using Alex Jones as the example. And a lot of conservatives didn't come to his defense. And I'm like, you just wait. They're using his example. And once they establish the precedent, then you're out of luck. And they did the same thing with him, in my view, and how they celebrated the Sandy Hook lawsuits. And I'm not counsel of record, so I can say what I want now without having somebody try to threaten me. I think that look at where they brought the suits. They brought it in liberal Democratic jurisdictions almost without fail. So they're repeating it. What happened with Jones was not going to stick only with Jones. They were going to repeat it. And I think a lot of it is politically motivated, but they created the problem in part for themselves by not being careful at what their sources were, and not applying strict evidentiary methods. Think about this is what I encourage everybody to do in a wide range of settings because I think it's useful for discovery of truth. Think of it like a trial. I'm on trial. What's my evidence? What is admissible evidence? What would a jury that doesn't have a bone in the fight think? What would a judge that doesn't have a bone in the fight think? They didn't do that, frankly, because they didn't apply the kind of discipline they should have before embracing theories that just lacked evidentiary merit and embracing other ones that personally attacked an individual, which did not have supporting evidence. Like you can see from our comment, that guy thinks there's a video out there. There's no evidence there's a video out there. That's the problem. And it didn't make any sense, folks. You can't have a super sophisticated secret spy operation by foreign governments and deep state operatives and him be on a Zoom call with Antifa telling him what he's confessing before the election. Think about it. Those two don't go together.
No, well, there's people reacting. I won't say viscerally, but they're reacting with an emotional response, which I can understand. It's what it is.
But that's how they suckered you. I mean, that's how they hoodwinked. The whole thing screams psyop. You look at, Q combined very useful techniques. The way that fantasy game builders build their fantasies out, with the way cult leaders organize their cults and persuasion techniques, the way new religions emerge, and the way you use high sales techniques. I mean, it's unlike almost any other anonymous messenger that's on a message board. So there's very unique techniques being applied, and it got people focused in a way that distracted them, that made them think they were participating when it was actually distracting them from positive, productive activity. And so and I think, and it was intended to radicalize them in many cases, to think that their only remedy was some form of violence or militia law or things like that. And so I think it was intentional. Now, I think Wood and Powell, I think, are both victims of it. I don't think either one are deliberate participants. Like I said, I've had my view about Wood. I think he really believes a lot of these things. I just don't think he's operating sanely or operating the way a trial lawyer should. And then I think the reality, people have asked me, now I believe this was deliberate because the Q world was trying to infiltrate the Flynn camp for 4 years. And so I was actually, now I realized there are people that were connected to Flynn that referred me, these people that said they had inside intel and the rest. I met with them solely because Flynn world people referred them to me, met them and realized they were totally full of it. And it was more like an entrapment effort. And I disassociated from them entirely. But I think now that they probably deliberately targeted people like Powell and Wood, and if you don't apply discipline methods to how you vet people, you can get suckered into that world. And I think that's what happened. And maybe that's a good bridge into special counsel Powell and what that means.
Yeah, no, hold on. Not just there yet. I have 2 questions and then a super chat. One, people were making the argument way back when Dominion's not suing is evidence that, the allegations are true. Some people now might think Dominion waited too long to sue. So just in defamation law, and another question, can Dominion sue if they have over a certain amount of employees? Because there's the issue that you can't defame a large enough group, but I imagine you can defame a company. So,
oh yes, you can definitely defame a company. So they'll be suing in their corporate name. Same with Smartmatic. Smartmatic probably has the easier case, just because the way that people like and to answer this one last time, Smartmatic owned a company that Dominion then owned, and because of it, they sued each other over it, and they worked together in the Philippine elections about a decade ago. That does not make one operating or owning the other, and the fact that any lawyer would know that. So I get some, ordinary people don't necessarily are in the weeds of corporate structure, maybe got confused, but people like Powell and Wood knew better. And why they kept it's because they believe their sources. Like some of their sources, always like this is why I recommend books by James Elroy and John Le Carre. If somebody from Cuba or Venezuela is an ex-spook and comes to you with some inside information, do not listen. Because that's the nature of just Google or DuckDuckGo search Felix Rodriguez, and you can see who these people are. They're not to be trusted, period. Particularly spooks from those parts of the world. So, and apparently that's where a lot of this stuff got originally sourced. So I have no doubt that Wood and Powell thought they were being given super secrets, not realizing this was total nonsense. When you think that the bombing at the AT&T building in Nashville this past week is all part of a super secret plot, and maybe it was a missile, which is what some people apparently think, you've lost your mind. When you think a car accident was an assassination attempt, this is an attempt to distract and detour people's attention.
Well, Robert,
not productive.
I'm bringing up a super chat because she thinks, people. This is my issue. I know you get this response when you go after Q, and my view is when you go after the Q as an entity, you are going after an intention. Whereas some of the things they're entitled to believe, people are entitled to believe what they want to believe, and they can try to prove it. They can, when you go after it as an entity, it doesn't go after specific issues. And fine. And I see people don't like it, and that's fine.
If you're part of Q, you're part of a psyop, and you don't realize it. You may be the victim of it, but you're absolutely part of a psyop. It'll be something to study in time. And I'll have more reasons and explanations on this. As I saw how it developed, it was really quite impressive as a skill set. I think it started off as almost a game to see how much they could do. I think there's AI involved and other things too, because it has sophistication that doesn't. I think they use the pig farmers in the Philippines as a front. The one guy. Just go look at who Code Monkey follows on Twitter and ask yourself whether you think that guy's a real cyber monkey expert, a real cyber sleuth. Expert. But the other reason why I continued to criticize it, aside from the fact that I thought it was dangerous in its debilitating effect on people's independence of thought and of action and leading towards a bad place, is I wanted people to witness how Q people respond. If I was wrong about Q being like a cult, then you would see them respond in the comment section with facts, with argument, with evidence. That's not how they respond. It's almost always confession through projection. They start shilling for a military intelligence. There may be some shilling for intelligence agencies involved, but it's coming from Q world. If you haven't figured that out yet, the Coomer defamation suit should be a roadmap for how do you get trapped into lawfare. They're going to be able to take out. They may be able to take out One American News Network altogether. Well, I mean, One American News Network couldn't survive a $100 million judgment.
Well, so they couldn't survive the judgment. But one thing I was saying also is, as far as a defamation lawsuit goes, they're not. It's not like they're going to get a judgment against OAN or Newsmax and not against other bigger players. So it's going to be one aggregate case, and they're not going to get a judgment against one. Basically, one defendant can piggyback off the defense of the others in terms of costs. But I mean, this is the thing. For people who think that Dominion couldn't sue because it's more than 50 people, I think it was the Kentucky Fried Chicken case.
Oh, yeah, you can't sue that many individuals, correct? Well, theoretically, it varies by case, it varies by jurisdiction, but a company can always sue for defamation. So the Kentucky Fried Chicken couldn't sue because the defamation was not of them particularly. It was of Kentucky Fried Chicken writ large, of all franchisees. So their standing was derivative as a franchisee. Dominion is just one company. So as one company, they can just sue as Dominion.
And so just to answer that question, and like you said earlier, damages would be very easy to prove. And they're probably going to Coomer as an individual, probably a private citizen, not a public figure. And
there's a reason why Fox went so. Even Lou Dobbs, who's a big fan of these theories, quickly started extracting himself from all of these issues, and Newsmax quickly started retracting. And I understand why One American News Network is doing what they're doing. They're making a massive gamble. Gateway pundit Jim Hoft, who I like, is making a massive gamble. And they don't understand the scope of it. And I think it's because they trust it was genius of the Q world to infiltrate the Flynn camp, because it got people who should have known better on board with some things they never should have been advancing and advocating for. So it was just that was not going to be credible. I mean, again, I just go back to the core evidence. If Dominion influenced the election, it should show up in the vote results. It doesn't. It's been refuted. Richard Barris and I both looked at it. So there's a reason why, and it's not like either one of us is afraid of going after someone or accusing someone of conspiracy. And again, and that's why I say there's a lot of projection. Just go look at the comment sections. Do you see the same kind of defenses you'd see when people are part of a cult? You do, consistently. And you see a lot of confession through projection. So a grift is when you go from 30,000 followers to 875,000 followers, like Lynn Wood did after he jumped on the Q train. So when you become Sidney Powell, and the other thing is, they're both raising money. They claim money's going to a 501c4 that doesn't appear to be registered yet as a 501c4. I'm not accusing them of anything wrong, but they're opening themselves up into a huge trap. Did they not pay attention to what happened with the Build the Wall?
Yep, I was going to say
doing this.
Cold fashioned pen. And the hold on, I just had one thought. It was about.
And by the way, Dominion's asking for all contacts and donor list. So you see how this looks like a deliberate setup? They got to out everybody who's potentially a critic, potentially a skeptic, potentially a donor, someone who could be targeted for suit, someone just like they did with Build the Wall. So that's why these things have to be done carefully. That's why when I established Free America Law Center, it's not a 501c4. It ain't any of that. It's just a basic LLC that supports important lawsuits that can't be done without some form of financial support, and to try to make it survive independent of me. But I was not going to give the IRS a list of donors or anything like that. I mean, there's a lot of mistakes being made. People can donate anonymously. They don't it's just all the signs of a trap, and they walked right into it. And I think it's not going to end well, unfortunately.